We're going to give it a second, but I want to welcome our very special and amazing guest, Mr. Peter Greenlaw, who has been devoting his life to serving humanity and making sure that people understand that they can be all they can be and healthy and vibrant. And we're going to talk about so many things. We're going to cram a lot in an hour. We're going to talk about COVID-19. We're going to talk about stress, and we're going to talk about toxicity. We're going to talk about nutrition deficiency. We're going to talk about obesity. We're going to whatever else. We have an encyclopedia here with Peter Greenlaw, who thank you for taking this time. You mentioned before we went live that you've had more Zooms in the last 3 weeks than you have in how long?
2 years.
2 years. I mean, this is a topic that's super, super important and touches the lives of everybody. And it is the number one topic that's trending every time I open my social media. People are wanting to understand what the truth is. And there's so many different sources of information regarding coronavirus. A lot of people are still desperate to understand and do all that they can. People want to be healthy, and they want to be back and with their friends and loved ones and get back to some sort of normalcy. But before we start, people need to know like who you are and why I'm so excited to have you as my guest. Can you just start back to when you were a student at CU Boulder? Go Buffs. Like, tell us about your experience and what you majored in.
Yeah, well, I was on the CU ski team. We're the sort of junior varsity of the Olympic team. I was a business major. It was an incredible experience. I was up there for 5 years. I've had season tickets ever since I graduated, and I hardly ever miss a game. But yeah, I got a tremendous education, and I think that's one of the reasons that I was willing to not just come on this call, but endorse you in the first place is because, I really think that we've gotten away from basics. And I think it's so important that, education is sort of just education, because I'm a person, as you'll see, that only deals in facts, not opinions, because opinions really don't matter. And there's so many things that I see now on the internet and on television. There are all these things, and none of them have any scientific background behind them whatsoever. So I'm a huge advocate of education. I am.
So you graduated from CU with a degree in business. And
Mhm.
what was the first thing you did with that degree? What'd you start
Well,
doing?
believe it or not, I went to New York and I worked on Wall Street for a year. So I was a broker, and I was in New York for a couple of years, and then I actually missed Colorado, and I moved back, and I started my own manufacturer's rep business, which I had up until about 16 or 17 years ago when I embarked on this new career that I'm on now. And so it's been an incredible journey, and obviously the things that I learned there. And I would say this, that in addition to the education, this is my view anyway, that I really felt like the personal relationships and the interconnectivity with people, which is communication, which ironically that's what I do today, was really one of the most important experiences I got from my 5 years at CU. I would have stayed longer, but my dad finally said I'm not paying tuition anymore after 5 years. I did graduate, by the way, so that makes sense. I think you froze up. Hello. Hello.
There you
Oh,
are.
you're back. Okay,
Okay, there
sorry.
you are.
I think
Okay.
you froze
We
up or didn't hear.
this to happen. Let me just tell the viewers, like, we know that everybody on the planet is doing a Zoom. And so
Yep,
we just kind of anticipate we might get a little bit of these glitches, but we're still here. Okay.
good. So did you hear that last part about the fact that I had my own business for, over 25 years? And I was saying that my college experience was about communication and interaction with other people more so than just my education. not to minimize my education, but I really felt that that prepared me for life in general. And I think that's one of the most valuable parts about going to college is that, you know, the diversity of people, people from all over the world with different viewpoints from different parts of the country. And I think that it helps to, at least in my opinion, it helped to make me, you know, who and what I am today. And a lot of it is back to those relationships that I learned, you know, basically how to be with people.
Well, you are an author of several books, 4 books,
Okay.
where you go deep into these different topics around toxins, around obesity, nutritional deficiency, stress. You've been on countless TV interviews. You've lectured all over the world, hundreds and hundreds, over what, 1,500, or was it
Yeah, 1500.
1,500 lectures. You are definitely an expert. And so, but how did you go from Wall Street to now being an expert in this field of nutrition?
Well, this is a really long story that I'll condense because we have a lot of information to cover. But effectively, 17 years ago, I walked to my doctor's office and he said to me, if I didn't do something drastically different that day, that I would not see my 2 sons graduate from college. My cholesterol was 400. My heart attack risk was 85 out of 100, and I was 40 pounds overweight. And he told me diet, exercise, and Lipitor. Well, having tried out for the Olympics, when he said exercise, I figured no problem. So I go 8 weeks on like 1,200 calories a day, the typical, you know, diet, exercise, and, you know, take the drugs. But after 2 months, I go back and I lost 8 pounds in 2 months. That's any diet you're going to see is about a pound a week. But my cholesterol only came down 20 points. And he goes, I can't give you any more medication. And a friend of mine who played professional football for the Oakland Raiders turned me on to the concept, which was just emerging, about toxins and about detoxification. And so July 3rd of 2003, I went on this, and it was in 48 hours, I lost 8 pounds. I ended up losing 20 pounds in about 20 days and 30 pounds in a month, and ended up losing 40 pounds in about 7 weeks. That's not the good part of the story. So I went back for scheduled blood work because I was scheduled for 8 weeks after that initial visit. And my doctor comes in and puts my chart down and says, Peter, my God, how much Lipitor you take? And I said, I haven't touched it in 2 months. He said, we need to retest you. I said, why? He said, your cholesterol's gone from 400 to 130. Your heart attack risk gone from 85 to 15. You lost 40 pounds. And uh, I said, you're not retesting me. And then another friend of mine, a gastroenterologist who I hadn't seen in a couple months, came up to me and said, Peter, are you sick? I said, what are you talking about? Well, I'd lost all this weight. She said, you don't have cancer, do you? I said, no. And she said, I told her what I was doing. She said, I've been using the same detox on all my patients. The man then in Venice come to Denver in 2 weeks and come to dinner and tell him your story. I figured free dinner in the tech center, steakhouse, it was all good. So I did that. And then after dinner, he pulled me aside and said, look, I know I've invented something that's going to change the world, and I need someone like you to tell the world about it. And I said, well, in all fairness, I said, that's great. I got one problem. He said, what's that? I said, I don't even know what a calorie is. He said, I'll teach you. So to clarify one thing, I am not the expert, but I became an expert on the expert. I'm basically a researcher, and I'm proud to say I've worked with some of the top medical doctors, oncologists, geneticists, molecular biologists, I mean, in the world. One of my colleagues has worked with 2 men who won the Nobel Prize in medicine. So those are my teachers. And so everything that I'm going to share with the audience today is based on what I learned from them. The generic kind of recipes about what can you possibly do. Our number one topic today is certainly to boost our immune system, but number 2, what can I do to actually engage my own body in detoxing, getting these chemicals out of us, which are leading to an attack on our immune system. So this all sort of came together, you know, at the same time. So that's really how I ended up. And then after I just became, I was like a neurotic researcher. I became nuts. I would learn this stuff and I go, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And then this doctor would say, well, you need to talk to this scientist, because when I started 17 years ago, literally, there'd never been a test done on human beings on whether or not these chemicals, we were storing them in our bodies. That wasn't done until 2006 by Mount Sinai Medical School in New York. And since that time, there've been more than 1,000 studies, and we'll get into that in just a couple of minutes. But so my path to doing what I'm doing now was completely out of left field or right field or center field or whatever you want to say. It was not planned in any way. And I just became this neurotic researcher that wanted to know more. And then I still believe my job today is to make the world aware of what's available. I'm not coming on here to convince anybody or sell anybody. Let me clarify that at the end. At the end, if you want to know, there are fulfillment companies out there. I won't be selling you anything, so don't worry about it. But if you are interested in some of the solutions that I've discovered that meet this very stringent criteria that I've learned, we'll be able to offer that to any of the listeners that are interested in that. My main job is to make them aware of what really is available and how potentially life-changing it could be.
Now, I've heard that we walk around already in our bodies with thousands of bacteria and viruses. I mean, we're all walking around with cold virus or flu virus or some other foreign object that God created us to be able to withstand and fight. It's called our immune system. We are
Correct.
created to be able to stay healthy and fight off foreign entities that enter our body. But, we're hearing that there are certain vaccines that will protect us from the coronavirus. And so, what are people supposed to believe when you hear, oh, this is just another version of a flu? And we're hearing many cases of people recovering from this over time, versus individuals like Bill Gates or these other billionaires who are saying you need to have a vaccine before we can open up the government. Like, is the truth somewhere in the middle, or what's your opinion?
Okay, well, first of all, I have to do this, or my lawyers will get upset. So what I'm about to share with you is for educational purposes only. It's not intended to treat, diagnose, make many medical claims whatsoever. It's always a good idea to check with your medical physician before embarking on any diet, exercise, or detox program. So now that we got that out of the way. All right, so it's a multifaceted question, okay? So first of all, one of my great colleagues, Dr. Marco Ruggiero, who I wrote my fourth book with, is one of the top oncologists in the world, and he's a molecular biologist. And I just had a long discussion with him yesterday about the fact he was on the team that developed AZT back in the day. It actually was developed by Barrows Wellcome in North Carolina when that was the first antiviral drug, that treated AIDS and, saved thousands and thousands of people. So in our discussion yesterday, it appears that this coronavirus, not even his research, other research, absolutely mimics in many ways HIV. And what's so infectious about this, if you can imagine, this is the surface of your cell. This thing, the virus, actually has these pointed, like little barbs that stick out. So it comes onto the cell and injects it. It latches on. The cell can't get rid of it, and then that's how it gets into the cell. Well, that's sort of the same process as HIV. So let's go down memory lane. So, one of the big things in the world today is what's called immunotherapy, all right? They're using it in cancer, et cetera. However, did you know that immunotherapy was discovered in about 1889 by a doctor in New York by the name of William Cawley, who was dealing with stage 4 cancer patients and basically injected them with dead pneumonia virus and was curing cancer back 100 and some years ago. Well, now it's all the rage. Well, Dr. Ruggiero in particular has worked in this field since 1983 in immunotherapy, being a great oncologist and whatever. And so he's the one that kind of taught me all this, but he's convinced based on the science that there is a real connection between, the HIV and the way it reacts, and also about this coronavirus. Let's also say that in this call today, I in no way want to leverage this. I'm in no way saying that we can prevent it. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that the best possible strategy we know of is to boost our immune system. That's not up for debate. If you look at the statistics, which I do because I'm a nerd, okay, that 89% of the deaths, for example, in Italy came from people with prediabetes, diabetes, obesity, where they had what's called a BMI, that's called your body mass index, of 31 and a half. 12 is about normal, just to give you an idea. And every single one of them has a compromised immune system, okay? Now, in this country, what we're finding is that the same numbers are panning out. And so many of the deaths are in nursing homes. Well, older people, compromised immune system, diabetes, high blood pressure, any number of diseases. It's really starting to make sense. And as we know, there are a lot of people that are what are called asymptomatic, meaning they got the virus and they had almost nothing at all. Well, that's because they had a really robust immune system. And I honestly believe, this is one thing I will say, Priscilla, that I'm convinced that the microwave, fast food, processed food, way we used to live, I really think we're going to turn that 180 degrees on their head. Did you know, for example, Priscilla, that when you eat processed food, you create an immune system response in your body? So think of your immune system like an army. That's what it is. Think of soldiers. They actually have a name in biochemistry. They're called macrophages. Macro means big and phage means eater. And what's their job? First, they send out sentries and they look for pathogens, bacteria, and viruses that you talked about, cancer cells, all these things. So they identify them, and then the army comes and attacks them and kills them. I mean, they estimate we get cancer like 5 times a day, but the immune system beats it back. So a lot of these things, these pathogens, these bacteria, these viruses, they're happening every single day. But I'm going to tell you right now that it's not enough, even if you do organic, even if you think you're eating healthy, it doesn't exist, because our food has become so nutritionally bankrupt that it can't support the higher function that are built in. We have a built-in immune system. We have a built-in detoxification system, believe it or not. Because when you eat lunch or regular food, part of the byproduct are toxins that the body produces. I call it the Superman molecule. It's actually called glutathione. It's produced in our cells. And what does it do? It boosts the immune system. Number one job. Number two job is to take toxins out of our body from food. But it was never designed or equipped to deal with the 80,000 chemicals we have in commercial use today in North America. The average adult, you, me, your husband, et cetera, would have between 1 and 2,000 chemicals embedded in the outer layer of fat in us called the adipose fat tissue, and the underlying fat called visceral fat. This isn't up for debate. I mean, this is what's going on. Again, I'm giving you facts. I'm not giving you opinions, okay? The main reason in my first book, which I wrote, shameless plug for me, Why Diets Are Failing Us, I proved that the stupidest thing that anybody could ever do was to count calories. Why? Because the body can't count calories. And instead of counting calories, what we needed to do was to make every calorie count. We've gotten so far away from that, it's crazy. Our food today, hopefully you agree, Priscilla, it is calorically dense and nutritionally bankrupt. You want the opposite. You want your food to be nutritionally dense and calorically bankrupt. And the things that we're the most deficient in, which really impact the immune system, which I'm going to get to in a moment, are minerals and something called amino acids. So let's deal with both of those briefly. There are 70 minerals that we need. You've heard of iron, calcium, magnesium, but we really need things like copper and zinc and chromium and beryllium and boron and molybdenum from Leadville, actually. There's 70. And in the studies, in the best organic foods, you get 15 out of 20 of the 70. See, and also in 212 studies, they prove that organic nutritionally, compared to what you get at, we're in Colorado, so Albertsons or Safeway or King Soopers, is really no different nutritionally. It's less polluted, but nutritionally it's not. What our body is screaming is for nutrition. And we're not getting it from our food. Let me give you 3 quick examples. An orange from 30 years ago, they estimate today to equal the nutrition of 1 orange. You got to eat 8. An apple a day keeps the doctor away from 1976. They estimate today you'd have to eat between 8 and 12 apples to equal the nutrition of 1 apple. And Cornell University did a study on spinach. Woo, Popeye stuff, right? Mm-hmm. They estimate from 1953, the iron levels in spinach to like 2000 have decreased by 4,300%. So please don't tell me you're going to eat healthy. Our food has gone like this as the disease statistics have gone like that. And now this monster shows up. We're unprepared. We are unprepared because we've lived the microwave and the processed food, and we've turned food into a convenience. See, food only has one job. Its job is to communicate genetic information to our genes. That's what it's supposed to do. Well, and not to pick on Doritos or Lay's potato chips, that doesn't happen. When the body sees that, it creates an immune system response. So now we're taking our soldiers over here to what's Doritos or Oreos or whatever. The body doesn't know what the hell that is. So we've diverted our immune system. We've moved our army. I'm saying let's put all of our troops, nobody in the barracks, put everybody in the front lines. So if this army comes marching towards us, at least we're prepared. That's what I'm saying. And so the first thing we're deficient in is minerals, along with vitamins and botanicals, but that's the main thing. The second thing that is the most critical thing in your human body are what are called amino acids. Now, I was taught this by this great molecular biologist, right? So amino acids, there are 20 that are common to humans and to plants, okay? As a matter of fact, we have to get them from an outside source. But here's what I didn't know being an athlete. When I ate steak or chicken or fish or turkey at training table, the protein itself was a foreign substance to my body. Whether you do animal or vegetable proteins, the body, it can't use it. The only reason you eat protein is what's inside the protein. Those are called amino acids, is 20. But here's the key. When you eat any protein, what matters is that the protein, it extracts, the body takes the 20 amino acids out, and what you want is the highest absorption possible, okay? Well, there's a new measurement called net protein utilization. What does it mean? It means if you eat 100 grams, let's say, of steak, okay? The actual amount that your body turns into human protein is only 30%. 70% is turned into toxic waste. That's why, God forbid, if you've ever known someone on kidney dialysis, they don't want to have protein, not because of the protein, but because of the waste, okay? Vegetables are the same. They're from 25 to 30% absorption, period, okay? Now, here's the interesting thing. This super molecule I talked about, glutathione, has to be produced in our cell. The only way you can make it is with 3 of those 20 amino acids. That's called cysteine, glutamate, and glycine, not to glaze people's eyes over. But you have to know the scientific words. At least that's what does it. So those 3 allow the cell to make glutathione. You mean the same glutathione that boosts my immune system and detoxes my body? I want more of that. How can I get more of that, right? Well, watch this. So Ruggiero, being one of the top oncologists in the world, okay, and again, we're not curing cancer, so everybody relax. What I'm going to tell you is he published a study about 6 or 7 years ago on 40. They took 40 stage 4 cancer patients, because that's primarily who he works with. And they had brain cancers, lung cancers, liver cancers, pancreatic cancers, lymphomas, you name it. And all 40, in 2 different groups of 20 each. In the first group, he put them on what we would consider today a really healthy diet. The second group, he put them on a diet maximum 20% carbs, 60% protein, and 20% good fats, in this case, olive oil and coconut oil. In the first group of 20, no one lived more than a year. In the second group, 80% of the patients are still alive 8 years later. What was the difference? The difference was in the second group, they got 60% of the calories from protein. But more importantly, one of the keys he taught me about cancer patients, you don't want them to lose weight. I lost my younger brother, as you know, in 2011 to kidney cancer. He was 6'4", and when he died, he weighed 120 pounds. He literally wasted away. And that's so typical in cancer, because here's the thing, in order to get enough protein the only reason you're eating the protein is for the amino acids. They can't eat 3 chickens a day or 3 steaks. They just can't digest it. So what did Ruggiero, in the second group, he used what's called an undenatured whey protein from Switzerland. Undenatured means not pasteurized. Now, let's go back to nature. When my kids were born, or any kids are born, did you know that the baby, when it's first born, basically is sterile and has no immune system whatsoever? It's only as the baby passes through the birth canal and picks up bacteria, viruses, fungi, yeast, and microbes that interact with colostrum and then mother's breast milk that the immune system is actually formed. We wrote a book about this called Your Third Brain, okay? Again, shameless plug for me. But the importance of this is critical, okay? So this immune system is created by the combination of colostrum first and then mother's breast milk. Well, what are the components of mother's breast milk? Mother's breast milk is 60% whey protein and 40% casein and milk protein. Well, it just so happens that in these whey proteins, if you can find them, they're difficult to find. Some of them have a composition of 60% whey and 40% casein and milk protein. Hello, I think when we're starting with mother's breast milk, that's probably a pretty good thing, although we're not drinking mother's breast milk, but we're giving the body the components that do what? Enhance, boost the immune system. We know it because it was how it was formed in the first place, okay? So this becomes critically important now. So watch this. So Dr. Ruggiero did not invent this test, net protein utilization, okay? But he's one of maybe a handful of doctors in the world that can do the test. So when you ingest a protein, they can measure what percentage of 100% of the aminos were converted in the body to make human proteins, okay? So when we got together and we wrote our first book 5 years ago, he was with me one day and just happened to notice these shakes that, I was taking, someone else had introduced me to them. And he said, wow, this is very interesting. I said, what? He said, just relax. So what happened is he took the shake I'd been ingesting, his shake from Switzerland, and he went literally to Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and whenever he was in the United States for about a month with me. He took him back to Switzerland in his lab and ran this analysis called net protein utilization. Watch this. First, he took all 20 shakes, all 20, made them in cold water and tested them after 5 minutes. Some of the shakes, and I won't mention them, they're nationally advertised, you see on TV in these stupid commercials, their absorption was 5%, 95% waste. His shake from Switzerland was 12%, and the shake I was ingesting registered 15%, the highest, but still 15 out of 100%, right? Well, then he did something I thought was really strange, as he told me later. He took all 20 shakes, so it was identical. The experiment was the same. Only thing he changed was he made them in warm water, room temperature above up to about 100 degrees. He mixed the shakes, took the lids off, let them all sit for 45 minutes and retested them. Well, 19 out of 20 of those shakes, the absorption of aminos didn't change. So if it was 5%, it was still 5%. So it wasn't the warm water and the time. There had to be something else. Yeah, because in the shake that I was taking, it contained these and I'm giving this generically for the audience. There's something that you would want to have in a shake that you select. They're called proteases. There are 5 of them that you need. Now, why did Dr. Ruggiero know about this? Because he worked for Sir John Vane of England in 1986, who won the Nobel Prize in medicine for his work on these enzymes. So he kind of knew a little bit about these enzymes. And he knew that they only reacted to temperature and time. So the shake that I had in cold water registered 15%. In warm water, after 45 minutes, went from 15% to 90%, the highest absorption of amino acids of any protein ever tested. Now, remember, out of those 20 aminos, there are 3 friends, the cysteine, the glutamate, and the glycine. Imagine, now you're accessing 90% of them. Do you think you're going to make more of this Superman molecule glutathione with 90% or with 15% or 30% with? Now, why was he interested? Because he wanted the best possible source of protein, not for protein, for the amino acids for his patients. He had nothing to do with the company that happened to make this, the fulfillment company that produced it, because he was neutral. He went out and he got 19 other shakes. So it wasn't like he wanted to run this experiment, which he thought would probably turn out the way it was. So now imagine you have something that simply by taking it, making it in warm water, mixing it, letting it sit for 45 minutes, you got 90% absorption of the 3 aminos, plus the other 20 amino acids you're absorbing at 90%. And scientifically, based on that, on those 3 amino acids in those quantities, you're obviously boosting your immune system, and you've created a very powerful detox mechanism in the body, which one of the side benefits is, way down the line, is yeah, people lose tremendous amounts of weight in a really short period of time. I mean, I've seen people in 4 days lose as much weight as they are in 8 weeks of diet and exercise. That's what happened to me 17 years ago. I just didn't know why until, recently with all this scientific breakthrough. But here's a couple of other interesting things. At the end of 45 minutes, the whey protein is completely gone. It's not there anymore. The casein protein is completely gone. And the sugar's been reduced by 25 to 30%. You're basically drinking pure liquid amino acids. And because we know scientifically that all this happens. Now, the other thing we know, as I told you before, we know we're storing these chemicals in our fat tissue from air, water, food, carpet, etc. So the other thing that the glutathione's doing, it's a massive toxin hunter, which goes out there and pulls these toxins apart. And the principle is nutritional density and caloric bankruptcy. And here's why. There's a lot of media buzz now, it has been going around before even Corona hit, on what's called intermittent fasting. And it comes in 2 varieties. The first one is you don't eat for 16 hours and you eat for 8 hours. But the one that has been the most dramatic is when people simply drink water and lemon for 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes up to 5 days. And I'm actually an advocate of that to a point, because they've had great results with diabetics and also people with epilepsy. But here's the shortcoming. When you go on a fast or when you reduce your caloric intake enough, the body will, number one, go into its reserve of sugar in your liver. That's called glycogen. It takes about 22 to 24 hours to burn through that sugar. At the end of the 24 hours, there's only 2 things left for energy: muscle and fat. The problem with intermittent fasting, the problem on a diet is because of the nutritional deficiency, when the body comes to the choice point, it will only go after the muscle as a survival mechanism. That's how it works. So now it actually converts our muscles into carbohydrates for the brain. The brain has to have 4 grams of sugar every 3 hours. So that's why these like low carb diets are really harmful and why people are miserable when they're doing it, because their brain chemistry is all screwed up because they don't have enough of the carbohydrates. Okay. The opposite of that is what? Intermittent nutritional fasting. Now, what's the difference? The difference is that you have extremely low calories. I mean, like less than 300, but you have such nutritional density that when the body burns through the sugar, which it'll do in the first 24 hours, and comes to the choice point, in the second 24 hours, it chooses the fat. The fat's gone. So unlike on a diet, think of a diet like a balloon. You lose the weight, you let the air to balloon, you eat, and it comes back. That's why people yo-yo. No, and there are two major peer-reviewed scientific studies, University of Chicago, Illinois, and Skidmore, proving that this intermittent nutritional fasting absolutely burns away the outer layer called the adipose fat tissue and the underlying fat called visceral, in which the toxins are stored, and proved it was removing toxins from the body. And here was another significant thing. It lowered inflammation. So now you've got this like, wow, holy smokes. I mean, this is crazy what it can do for people. And I tell people, look, don't even talk to me about getting in your skinny jeans. And, hopefully we'll absolutely be able to go to a beach again sometime in my lifetime. But that aside, imagine by doing this, by using this formula in conjunction with intermittent nutritional fasting, which is based on what? Nutritional density, caloric bankruptcy, because of the fact you've got to have those really low calories to be able to turn on the detox mechanism in your body. You're boosting your immune system, you're detoxing. Oh, and the other thing you're doing is reducing free radicals, which also attack the immune system. So now we have a strategy of what? We're attacking the toxins and the free radicals that attack our immune system. At the same time, we're boosting it. And let me say again, we're not talking about preventing coronavirus. All we're saying is, and I tell people this all the time, why in the hell wasn't your immune system important to you 5 months ago? It's the number one system in your body, because in our society, what do we rely on? Ask your doctor. We get sick, we go to the doctor, and I have all my books are wrote with MDs, so they don't get mad at me when I say this. And it's like we're now into this procedural. And I have diabetics that tell me, I can eat whatever I want, and then I shoot myself with insulin. That's the mentality we've gotten into in this country. And I know that's a long way from what you asked me about Bill Gates and vaccines and all those kind of things. I'm not a vaccine person. I have not had a flu shot in 17 years. And I'm not suggesting other people do that. I'm just telling you what I do. If you look at the success rate of like the flu virus, it's about 21 or 22%. Now, maybe Corona is going to be different. I don't know. I'd have to see it. I'm more interested. I've seen my colleagues have told me about, the the hydrochloroquine is definitely showing. Granted, we still need a clinical study, but like the doctors have said, when I got a patient dying, what do they have to lose if I give it to them? And a lot of them, it's already saved a lot of lives. I still think that no matter what, even if we come up with a vaccine, the most significant thing we can do is boost the immune system and detoxify the body. And yeah, you'll fit in your skinny jeans, but do you want to fit in your skinny jeans as they roll you into the emergency room? Because you could go on a starvation diet and the only thing you're going to lose is muscle mass. And then the minute you come off it, you're going to gain it back. I mean, there are hundreds of studies now proving that the one thing about going on a diet in the long run is you will gain weight. Because what they don't tell you is by having these lowering the calories, which have no nutrition, by the way, you absolutely slow down the most important measurement in your body. It's called your basal metabolic rate, which is the rate at which you burn calories, like when we're sitting here right now or when we're sleeping. Okay. So everything we're doing is upside down. It's backwards. It's like we're looking through the wrong end of the telescope. We think we're doing diet and exercise on a problem we don't even exist. And shameless plug for me, I discovered a new medical syndrome called TDOS, which is toxicity driven by nutritional deficiency, causing you to overweight, and those three drive stress. And I think we got enough stress already in the world with Corona. And the only, not because of me, but the clinical studies prove it, the only surefire thing on the planet that attacks all four of those elements is intermittent nutritional fasting, which is based on nutritional density and caloric bankruptcy. I know this is a hell of a lot of information. It is potentially life-changing, etc. So there's no diet, there's no exercise program, there's no Jenny Craig, Oprah, whoever, that even they have no clinical studies. They have no evidence that all they're saying, and I'm going to tell you something right now that pardon my French, it so pissed me off. I was like crazy. Watch the next time you see Nutrisystem ad. Okay. They show the before and afters. Freeze frame it. On the bottom, it will say in small print, the participants in this commercial lost their weight on a previous program. They didn't lose it on Nutrisystem. It's no, I can't make this stuff up. I look at it and go like, what the hell? I mean, this is crazy. I mean, can you imagine that? So they're totally not you. Every testimonial, freeze it. It'll say at the bottom, the participant lost their weight on a previous program. And they can put that crap on TV and people buy it. They're doing it right now. You know, like Shark Tank's got this keto thing. There's no clinical evidence. They're all diets. Diets don't work. My first book, audience, go buy it. Why diets are failing us. A shameless plug for me. So I'm sorry. I know I got off on a little bit of a tangent, but there was a lot of information. I'll take a deep breath now and let you, ask me another question.
I feel like I just got a degree. Like, you need to hand me my diploma. Everything that you said really resonates and makes sense, because I don't think we've ever talked about my life as an athlete as well. So I was a competitive tennis player. I coached high school tennis and volleyball, and then I eventually got into female bodybuilding. And when you're an athlete, obviously your nutrition is very regimented and measured out, and protein and carbs and fat, protein, carbs and fat. And like you said, aminos, and getting in those shakes so you can get enough of the amino acids and all of those things. Like, I totally
But you were absorbing less than 10% with the shakes, those less than 10%. I mean, that's the point. Because unless it contains those proteases, you can let it sit for a month. It's not going to change that number. And the fact that you were ingesting protein thinking it was doing something for you when it was a foreign substance to your body.
So this is like really informative, how you're talking about what we as a society have been doing to continue to introduce toxicity into our bodies. One thing that you shared that's new information for me, it's not just about picking organic foods, because I'm big on organic, but to really pay attention to the source of the nutrition, because I love fresh spinach. I eat a lot of spinach and broccoli because we know that they're high density, nutritious foods compared to other vegetables, but really researching the sources to make sure like that they're not depleted. So that does mean something totally different. So in these last 15 minutes, maybe we can talk a little bit about what people can do. You know, like, people were hoarding processed foods because they thought, well, maybe if this is the apocalypse and I'm going to be stuck in my house, so I'm going to get canned this, chips, soda, all of these things. But can you give some really basic first steps? Because if you go 0 to 60 with people, then they shut down and they're like, I can't do that. But what are some sensible starting points for people? I know in my home, we started eliminating soda, right? We started eliminating processed foods and cooking more fresh foods and shopping on the outside of the grocery store. Are there some additional ideas that you can suggest?
Yeah, one of the best things that you could do is go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and I don't sell them, I have nothing to do with it, and buy a chlorine filter for your shower head. Chlorine, and I would never drink tap water again. On average, on any drinking 40,000 municipal water supplies, they've found an average of 400 to 600 toxic chemicals in the water. I mean, the water plants are there to get rid of, giardia and, that kind of stuff. But the problem with chlorine, when it enters your stomach, it destroys your gut. It destroys your gut bacteria. So that's one of the reasons we've got 70 million Americans today on antacids, and many scientists believe, not me, I didn't do the research, they're telling me this. So that's one thing. But when you take a shower, you're absorbing water 8 times faster through your skin than you are through drinking. So you go swimming, come out of a pool, how do you smell? You smell like chlorine, because your body has absorbed all of this. So that's a real simple thing. Yes, 100% buy organic, but not because it's more nutritionally, because it's less polluted. And I don't care if you go to farmer's market, I don't care if you grow it yourself. We basically destroyed the soil over the last 100 years in this country with the amazing amount of herbicides and pesticides that we've used. And even though one field could be organic and one field's regular, when they come over with the crop dusters, the wind, obviously blows the pesticides over there, or it's in the water table. I mean, you really can't avoid that. Yeah, I think eliminate. I would also obviously, and this isn't me saying this, if you're gonna eat, this will make people mad. Don't eat corn-fed beef, and don't eat beef that's been injected with antibiotics and hormones, etc. Because the concept everyone needs to get: we eat whatever they eat, if it's a plant or an animal. Okay, so if you get a chicken that's been ingested with antibiotics, now you're getting antibiotics, and again, the scientists believe that's one of the reasons we're having this high antibiotic resistance now, where these bacteria they've mitigated around and recreated and reformed, and all that kind of stuff, which is coming back, of course, to our immune system and everything else. And what do antibiotics do? They kill bad guys, but they also kill the good guys. So while they're killing off the bad guys, they're also killing off your good soldiers and actually compromising your immune system. Okay, that's why normally after someone's on an antibiotic regimen, they put them on a high dose of probiotics. Okay, but there's actually something even better that you want, and that's called prebiotic fiber. Pre. Now, why is that better? Because prebiotic fiber allows your gut to make more of the good flora. And the concept is, just like with glutathione, anytime that you can make it in your body, your light years of taking it as a supplement, okay? And you're going to see a plethora of people jumping out and selling glutathione supplements. Well, my doctors have told me they're basically paying for expensive urine. That the body, you either have to make the glutathione, or, and in COVID treatments, believe it or not, they are treating people intravenously with glutathione, and they're also ingesting it nasally, which makes sense, okay? Because you're totally bypassing the stomach. So this becomes really critical, that if you can have a shake that also makes glutathione, that's just such a great, great strategy. You want to really limit the amount of sugar. That's the other thing that we absolutely know. For example, Harvard proved that sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. And the problem with people on diets, and the reason they can't stick, is that they've basically been addicted and they don't even know it. And so ultimately, eventually when they crack, it's like they have to go back basically to their crack cocaine, which is sugar. The average woman in this country, this is shocking, eats between 150 and 175 pounds of sugar a year, based on what they're selecting, et cetera, because sugar is almost in everything that we're consuming. So there's another, now with children, oh my gosh, even more important with ADD, ADHD, really got to limit the sugar. And I know I'm guilty. When my kids were little, if you're good, I'll give you a candy bar. If you're good, I'll give you a lollipop. That's how we've been brought up, but we've been brainwashed. And so, for example, kids' cereal is the worst thing you could ever give to a kid. You might as well be giving them crack cocaine. And all cereal, for the most part, I wouldn't say nothing's 100%, but almost, is simply dead flakes in a cardboard coffin. And I noticed today they're back. Post had Kellogg's. They had a big commercial. There they are showing the kids eating Frosted Flakes and whatever. No, no, no. They're getting no nutrition, none, zero. They're getting sugar, temporarily energy, but then they're crashing. Look at our world today. 5-Hour Energy, Red Bull, Starbucks coffee. I'd probably make a lot of people mad, but that's the reality. We're running on empty. We're getting massive amounts of calories with no nutrition, and our bodies are suffering. And so when something like Corona comes, it's no wonder that those with compromised immune systems, and I feel, it gives me no pride to tell you this, but you probably are aware of it, that right now, 56%, for example, of the cases of Corona in this country are in the African-American community. That's just horrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, as you I'm sure are aware, that in the African American community, we have a disproportionate amount of diabetes, high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, etc. So again, we've been lured into this cheap calories, and we kick the can down the road. Yeah, you can get a Happy Meal for $1, but what's it doing to us? Mm-hmm. See, and I've said before, is our food doing something for us, or is it something doing to us? And when you're eating processed food, it'd be like you're going to a gas station and you can buy really cheap gas, but the problem is you're only getting 2 miles to the gallon. You paid 50 cents a gallon, but to go 20 miles, it's going to cost you $10. That's the problem with this cheap food. It's not about the amount of calories, it's about the amount of nutrition. And so, for example, you take one of these a shake that was made with those elements, with minerals, with prebiotic fiber, and with those proteases. They estimate the nutrition in that would be the equivalent to 3 full meals. In other words, you could have one shake a day, like in the morning, and it would be the equivalent to having 3 full meals, and it's only like 240 calories. But see, the calories don't matter. But that's, you said it before, brilliant, about that's our society. We've been programmed into this about, oh, I got to lower my calories. Did anyone ever talk to you about what was in the calorie? Did they ever like bring that up? See? Choom, choom.
Calories are not created equal, are they?
Definitely not. I wrote about that in my first book, and was one of the people that kind of sound the alarm on this. I just looked at it and went, this doesn't make any sense. Here we are ingesting these chemicals that are being stored in our fat cells, proven, okay? As a matter of fact, one of the fastest growing diseases now, sadly, is what's called fatty liver disease. And they're saying in the next 10 years, one of the major things, the #1 transplant thing will be livers, because the liver is becoming so impregnated with fat. Like 50% of the liver in an obese person is fat. There shouldn't be any fat in the liver whatsoever. But the liver is trying to protect itself, because when one of these chemicals come in, there's no defense mechanism against it. So it takes the chemical and stuffs it in a fat cell. And yet in tests, in just 25 hours of fasting, they've been able to reduce the amount of fat in the liver by 25% in 24 hours. What a simple strategy. But people don't know. See, they're watching, Marie Osmond or Oprah or whatever diets, and now you understand it's a complete lie. It's a complete lie.
You go get him, Peter.
I get
Peter. You know what? I don't think people know that you're 100 years old, but you look like you're like, because you know how to say it.
110.
So some of the things as we're closing that I'm hearing you talk about, obviously reducing toxicity. Like, let's start there. Let's remove as much toxicity
as we can.
Also, understanding inflammation and how foods can contribute to inflaming our cells.
100%.
Things like sugar and some of these other foods, processed foods. You mentioned the inequities in certain demographics and how, if we're just looking strictly at data, our Surgeon General shared in a press briefing that, yes, you're right. Like, the coronavirus is impacting people in Black and brown communities more. And, they can't afford, a lot of them, to buy nutritious meals. They're buying cheaper foods that are not as healthy for them. And so, how can we slowly introduce healthier foods to just kind of make sure that we're helping them build up their immune systems?
Let me say one other thing that's really important. I've had high-level conversations with a supplier to the U.S. military. They're throwing their hands up in the air. They're saying that within less than 10 years, 65% of the applicants to the military will not be able to get in because of obesity. They have a crisis in the military right now with people being overweight and diabetics and high blood pressure. That's across all demographics in the military. So you understand now this is literally going to become a national security issue. I'm telling you, I've had these discussions in the last week or so with them, and they're going like, oh my God, this might be an answer. So we'll see what happens. But so you can see what's going on. It's proliferating all of society. Yes, in the Black and brown community, it's disproportionate. And I would hope that maybe there'd be, maybe even someone like you could help us to. It's not that expensive. And all I'm saying is, if all they did was one shake a day as one of their meals, I really think we could really shift the dynamics. I think you could drastically lower healthcare costs. I really do.
Salt, right? Is salt the big contributor to high blood pressure? Processed salt. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So
what if I told you that high blood pressure, for the most part, is dehydration? It's actually caused by dehydration. Yep. And there's a book was written on this called "You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty." And I read it, a number of years ago, and they just were talking about the fact that if you're going to do salt, you want to do sea salt, not iodized salt, because an iodized salt, to make it white, what do they leach out of the salt? The minerals. You mean the same minerals we need? So let's take it out to make the salt white or sugar white. So the point is that by doing something like Himalayan sea salt, you're going to really lessen the impact that the iodized salts, have on the body. Now, obviously, if someone has high blood pressure, they need to monitor the sugar. I got that. But for the rest of us, if we do, and I don't sell sea salt either, but if you do sea salt, there's another tip that I'm glad you brought that out that I can give to people. That's a
Okay.
simple
So
thing to do.
yeah. So I'm thinking like some really
Grass-fed beef.
concrete things people can look for. Grass-fed beef,
Absolutely.
grass,
100%.
like not corn-fed
Yep.
chicken
Yep.
and
Anything.
So change the salt. If you're using iodized salt, use
Sea salt.
like you said, Himalayans or sea salt.
Yep.
Reduce the amount of processed foods that you're eating.
Yes.
People can email you at Peter, and I will put this in the message or
right, and let them know I'm not
Peter
what I
at
would do.
GoCleanse.
Yeah, and I would put them in touch with someone that could. I'm not selling them anything, but if they want to know about solutions or fulfillment companies that meet the criteria that I talked about today, then they'll do that. I'm not here to sell them anything.
Sure.
But
I know
again,
there are going
people
to
are
be
probably going,
people who are curious.
where the hell can I find something like this? So that I'm more than willing to do
We
that.
want people
Okay?
to know like what they can do when this is
Up to
over. Like
them.
where can
Yeah.
they go? What can they do?
Right.
How can we help our brothers and sisters in humanity like save the planet? Like let's be healthy, let's shrink. And you know what? That's going to bring a lot of people peace of mind, Peter. People are going to feel a lot more confident about hugging their family and hugging their friends and coming together when they know that they've done their part and they're feeling good and they're heading in the right direction. I mean, that's what people care about. I know it's what I care about. Like, I know
You're an
I'm
educator.
relatively healthy. Right.
You're
I'm an
educator, of
educator. And
course. Hello.
I'm not telling people what to think or believe. And I
No.
always say this, just like you started out with your disclaimer, when I'm saying to people, like, today was just a conversation. We're talking about these issues that matter to people. We all want to know when the economies or the businesses are going to open up. And I'm hearing there's plans to open up on May 1st. What can we do to make sure that we're putting ourselves in the best situation possible to get quote unquote back to normal and whatever that new normal is going to be for us? But we have the power to impact what our lives look like, how we feel, our sleep, our energy, our mind, how we're thinking, everything about our reproduction. You kind of hinted a little bit about that with your third brain book. So like we have a lot of new mothers. I was on a Zoom call last night with a brand new mom, and they were quarantined when she had her baby in the hospital, and before they were able to leave as a family. Like these are real issues for parents with their children because they have young immune systems as well. How can parents help their kids be successful? And so like we are like down to the last minute. I want everybody to, again, go to your website, Peter Green or the Greenlaw, what is
Peter
it?
Peter at GoCleanse.com.
Peter at GoCleanse.com is the his
my
email.
That's my email.
But he has website and books if you want to read more. But I would just encourage people to educate themselves. Don't take our word for it. Peter has dedicated his life to research and talking with doctors, and he's so humble and constantly learning. And even though I call him an expert, he's so humble. He's like, I'm still learning so much. And you could just see,
I'm not
like,
the expert.
there's so much more in that brain. Every time I talk to you, I'm just like, wow, I thought I knew a lot, but talking to you, it's like I'm learning more. And now I know, like, after this, I'm going to be calling you because there's some shakes I need to get for my family as well. I'm like going to tell my husband to go buy a water filter and all this stuff. Those are things that we can do like right now. And so thank you so much, Peter.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So
I'm glad it was. The time went by too fast.
I know. And when this is all over, we're going to have to break some bread. Okay.
Yes, I love it. Great idea.
All right. Well, give my love to your wife and your son, who I met, who's also a CU Boulder grad and musician as well. And your son in the islands.
Costa Rica.
Okay. And your new grandbaby and everything. And so thank you so much for your time. And you just have a wonderful rest of your week and be well.
I will. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.